A drug dealer will kill 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 people during the course of his or her life. Thousands of people are killed, or their lives are destroyed, their families are destroyed.
6:11 a.m., Washington, D.C. A routine compliance check inside the administrative wing of the Secretary of Defense's office turned into a national alarm. Behind a simple office printer, investigators found a hidden steel compartment. Inside it were 3.1 tons of fentanyl precursor logs, 19 bricks of compressed cocaine, $162,000 in unmarked bills, a military encrypted laptop, and a burner phone, still warm.
The FBI launched a massive statewide raid today on city and county offices and at Dannenbaum Engineering.
Agents left behind more questions than answers, and it's unclear what may have triggered the investigation.
This was not evidence from a raid. It was discovered inside the workspace of Colonel Richard A. Kelton, retired combat veteran, now serving as Pentagon logistics liaison. When agents placed him in handcuffs, Kelton said nothing. No excuses, no reaction. That silence was more frightening than any confession. Hours later at Quantico, analysts cracked open his encrypted laptop. What they saw pushed the Pentagon into full alert. Secret shipments, corrupted employees, and safe houses in quiet neighborhoods. What began as a routine check had just exposed the first crack in a much larger breach, one that reached deep inside America's own institutions. If you're starting to see how deep this goes, hit like and type danger. What comes next gets even darker. By the time the sun rose over Quantico, the truth sitting inside Richard Kelton's laptop was already sending shockwaves through every federal agency. The files were not random notes or scattered emails. They were organized, time-stamped, coded, showing months, possibly years of quiet infiltration. And as analysts scrolled deeper, the sense of danger grew heavier. The first folder contained routing logs for 17 covert shipments moving through Department of Defense supply chains. They were disguised as naval supply chain diversions, slipped into legitimate equipment manifests, and cleared with forged federal tags bearing Kelton's digital authorization. Each shipment proved one terrifying fact. The cartel didn't hack the system. They cloned it and used it against us. The second folder was worse. A spreadsheet of 42 federal and state employees, from procurement clerks to Pentagon liaisons, each one tagged trusted asset. 7 worked directly under the Secretary of Defense. 11 had biometric access to restricted defense networks, and dozens more were hiding in plain sight in admin cubicles, logistics divisions, and shipping hubs across the country. They weren't just staff. They were part of it. The third folder exposed the depth of the operation. A blueprint, not for a military base, but for a cartel logistics stronghold. Located 40 miles outside Las Cruces, New Mexico, camouflaged beneath an abandoned airstrip. 3 underground levels, lead-shielded walls, a full tunnel network built for movement without detection. The codename, El Nido, the nest. But one thing was already certain. If the cartel could reach the Pentagon once, they could reach anywhere. This is no longer just corruption, it's an occupation. If you're still with me, smash like and comment infiltrated. Because what comes next makes everything so far look like the surface. By 5 a.m. the next morning, the United States was no longer dealing with a rogue officer or a hidden compartment. It was facing a live network, active, armed, and embedded across multiple states. Federal command centers, still digesting the files from Kelton's encrypted laptop, issued a single directive: execute all targets simultaneously.
We saw so much illicit fentanyl and drugs flood into our state. This was killing our people. And I knew as Attorney General, and I used to press to do more here, and thankfully now we have President Donald Trump in office. We're working in a partnership. But
within minutes, tactical teams moved. Virginia, the first breach. A 2-story home in Fairfax sat dark and quiet. To neighbors, it belonged to a retired DOD contractor. But surveillance heat maps told a different story. 5 men inside, awake, moving. At 5:03 a.m., an FBI breaching team crossed the front yard. The door exploded inward. Gunfire erupted from the stairwell. Short-barreled rifles spat rounds into the kitchen. Agents dove behind the island, returned fire with precision. Glass shattered, smoke thickened. In under a minute, 2 suspects were down. The rest surrendered under floodlights. Inside the pantry, 28 kilograms of meth, forged military shipping tags, routing slips tied to real Pentagon manifests. It wasn't just a safe house, it was a logistics cell built inside an American neighborhood. Still think this is just a smuggling op? Stay with me, because this war is happening behind our walls, and the next doors to breach are already being watched. Arizona, the breach in the desert. While the Virginia safe house was still being cleared, A tactical MRAP tore across a dirt access road south of Tucson toward a steel frame fabrication hangar intelligence had flagged hours earlier. Sparks erupted as the armored vehicle punched straight through the side bay door. Inside, cartel riflemen opened fire from behind welding stations and stacked metal coils, bullets snapping off the MRAP's armor and ringing through the warehouse like struck iron. Agents advanced with precision fire, moving in tight formation. The firefight lasted barely 4 minutes, but it was brutal. Flashbangs, ricochets, shouts in Spanish, and the sharp clang of boots on graded catwalks filled the air. When the smoke settled, agents counted 31 military-grade weapons, including 2 Javelin launchers, dozens of forged DoD cargo seals, and 612 pounds of fentanyl precursors hidden inside machining crates. Proof the facility was directly tied to Kelton's phantom shipments. New Mexico, the airstrip tunnel. 40 miles outside Las Cruces, at the abandoned strip labeled in Kelton's laptop as El Nido, agents found something far worse than a storage site. When they breached the rusted hangar doors, the concrete floor looked empty, until sonar exposed the truth.
To the tangle of tunnels used to traffic not only drugs, but also high-level drug kingpins themselves.
A sub-level cargo tunnel ran beneath the runway, reinforced and stretching toward the foothills. Inside, 1.4 tons of mixed narcotics. A rack of encrypted radios running live traffic to an offshore server, and 4 suspects with direct ties to federal procurement offices. One attempted to flee through a maintenance shaft, but a drone team sealed the exit before he could surface. New Jersey, the escape attempt. In Trenton, a former DoD cybersecurity contractor bolted the moment he spotted federal vehicles. He sprinted through an alley, clutching a metal briefcase, but agents cut him off at the corner. When tackled, he was carrying a flash drive protected by a rotating cipher used only by NATO-linked contractors. Inside that drive was a cloned interface to an internal Defense Department shipment portal, with full authorization still active. By sunrise, the numbers were staggering. Across Virginia, Arizona, New Mexico, and New Jersey, federal teams seized 4.8 tons of narcotics, 208 firearms, 31 military-grade weapons diverted from U.S. supply chains, 147 arrests, including 39 internal collaborators. But victory offered no relief. The evidence recovered from these raids confirmed what investigators feared from the moment Kelton's hidden compartment was discovered. This network was not an isolated cell. It was one branch of something larger, deeper, engineered to survive even if exposed. If these operations shocked you, type yes. The real danger isn't the raids, it's what they revealed. By the time the final teams returned to base and the first light settled over the East Coast, federal analysts were already confronting a darker truth. The evidence pulled from Virginia, Arizona, New Mexico, and New Jersey did not simply confirm cartel activity. It mapped an entire shadow system operating beneath the United States' own infrastructure. And that system was far more advanced than any agent expected when the investigation began. The breakthrough came in Boston, inside an unremarkable federal building, where intelligence teams had spent the night cross-checking documents seized from Kelton's network. At 7:40 a.m., an analyst froze as a clustering pattern formed across her screen. 3 distinct corridors of movement, weapons, narcotics, and money, each flowing through legitimate American businesses with clean histories and no visible weaknesses. The map expanded node by node until the pattern no longer resembled trafficking routes. It resembled a parallel infrastructure, built quietly beneath the real one. A second skeleton system, a counterfeit federal bloodstream, invisible until now. The weapons corridor ran through defense subcontractors in Texas and Alabama. These firms had spotless inspection records, clean Pentagon audits, and routine contracts moving replacement components to Army depots and Air Force bases. But invoices recovered from the Tucson tunnel showed identical part numbers being reused to disguise illicit cargo.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized some 2,000 pounds of cocaine from a cargo ship.
Every container had a counterpart, a legitimate military shipment paired with a hidden narcotics crate, a perfect mirror designed to fool internal logistics checks. The drug corridor stretched from Savannah to Newark, using suburban fulfillment centers, family-owned courier services, and even a veterinary biomedical supplier to funnel fentanyl precursors and synthetic opioids under the label of sterile research compounds. In Norfolk, investigators traced forged Defense Department seals back to a retired logistics officer living quietly in Wilmington, Delaware. A man whose signature had been replicated and applied to more than 4 dozen illegal shipments he had never approved. The financial corridor was the most dangerous of all. It ran through nail salons, tax service kiosks, contracting microfirms, and even federal acquisition pathways. Each business generated cash flow patterns that looked ordinary until analysts layered Kelton's encrypted spreadsheets against overseas wire data. Suddenly, silent streams of money lit up the map. Transfers moving steadily to accounts in Sinaloa, Guatemala City, Cali, and Cartagena. As agents absorbed the full scope of the infiltration, panic began creeping through federal command rooms. This was not cartel activity slipping past border checkpoints. This was cartel activity woven into American life, hiding inside the very systems civilians used every day, and it had operated undetected for years. Then came the internal breaches. In Maryland, a Defense Transportation Agency clerk tried to flee when he saw investigators approaching. Cornered between 2 parked vehicles, he drew a pistol before being tackled and disarmed. In San Antonio, 2 defense communications contractors barricaded themselves inside a restricted server vault and smashed multiple encrypted drives before tactical units forced entry. Evidence recovered from the fragments showed they had received steady payments laundered through one of the very storefronts flagged in the financial corridor. Before noon, the investigation's ripple effects began tearing through federal offices across the country. The first cracks appeared quietly. A logistics analyst failing to report for duty. A systems administrator noticed a wiped workstation hours before an audit. A procurement officer feeding documents into a shredder that were not scheduled for disposal until next quarter. At first glance, these incidents looked like panic, but together the pattern made something unmistakably clear. The compromised employees understood the walls were closing in. In a satellite office outside Charlotte, agents arrived to question a mid-level defense logistics coordinator flagged in Kelton's shipment matrix. When they reached his cubicle, they found the chair overturned, his badge clipped neatly to the desk, and his computer cleared to factory settings. Security footage later showed him sprinting out a side exit with a backpack, abandoning his government vehicle, and disappearing into a wooded trail behind the campus. That backpack was recovered 2 hours later beneath a highway overpass. Inside were 4 burner phones, an encrypted tablet, and $12,600 in cash. In Denver, 2 civilian subcontractors attempted something far more brazen. When they noticed investigators entering the building, they grabbed restricted access cards from a storage locker and rushed a classified server vault. Their goal was obvious: wipe routing data tied to the forged Pentagon identities uncovered in the financial corridor. But the instant they swiped the stolen badges, the system triggered a silent alarm. Tactical units intercepted them before they made it through the first door. Subsequent review of their accounts showed a trail of unexplained deposits stretching back nearly a year. And then came the most disturbing incident. At a secure communications annex outside Tampa, a senior defense technician barricaded himself inside a restricted terminal suite after learning he had been scheduled for an interview. He severed fiber lines, smashed 2 encrypted devices, and attempted to upload a classified logistics blueprint onto a personal drive. As agents forced their way toward the door, he yelled that investigators didn't understand the scope, that others were already cleaning up the deep trails. The standoff lasted nearly 12 minutes before agents breached the room and restrained him. His fingerprints were later matched to packaging from the Las Cruces hub and forged manifests tied to the Baltimore corridor. These confrontations revealed the same chilling truth. The cartel's reach was deeper than anyone had feared, and it was fighting desperately to keep itself hidden. By early evening, federal leadership convened an emergency call with directors from 6 compromised agencies and multiple state offices. Every department reported the same alarming patterns: missing personnel, shredded archives, system wipes, sudden resignations, medical leave requests filed at the exact moment investigators approached, and attempted breaches of classified server rooms. This no longer resembled scattered corruption. It looked like an internal collapse occurring in real time. The problem was no longer the 3.1 tons of narcotics, or the forged seals, or the funnel of weapons routed through Pentagon channels. The problem was trust, and how quickly it evaporates when an enemy learns to live inside the very institutions meant to defend the nation. And as the day came to a close, one warning echoed through every command room. If this network fought this hard to hide itself, what else was it hiding?
Tonight, the FBI is launching their own investigation into 2 violent arrests captured on body camera in Mesa, Arizona.
If this collapse inside federal agencies concerns you, type expose. By the end of the week, the United States government faced a reality it had not confronted in generations. An enemy that had embedded itself not at the border, but inside the system itself, feeding on blind trust, routine procedure, and the illusion of federal security. The raids, the arrests, the internal confrontations, all of it had exposed only the surface layer. Beneath that veneer, investigators began to see the outline of something far more engineered. A structure built to endure, designed to survive even if individual operatives fell. At 9:15 a.m. on Friday, leaders from the FBI, DEA, DHS, DOJ, DOD, ATF, and multiple state intelligence units gathered inside a secure conference room in Washington. Screens lit the walls with maps, timelines, shipment trails, and red clusters stretching across the country like fractures in a national skeleton. The combined picture was the same everywhere they looked. The cartel had not infiltrated the Pentagon by chance. They had mapped the federal government like a blueprint and slipped into the cracks with precision. In response, the Secretary of Homeland Security announced the formation of the Federal Integrity Restoration Task Force, FIRTF, a national unit with authority beyond any audit team in modern history. Its mission was blunt and uncompromising. Identify every compromised channel, reverse every cartel footprint, rebuild every corrupted system from the inside out. The first phase launched immediately. Teams flooded 9 federal agencies, pulling records from procurement divisions, communications hubs, clearance offices, data terminals, shipment control units, and military logistics warehouses. They uncovered forged identities embedded inside HR systems, unauthorized badge replicas, doctored procurement requests routed through shell contractors, and encrypted backdoors hidden inside routine software updates. Every new discovery widened the scope and deepened the alarm. Meanwhile, field teams executed a second wave of actions across multiple states. In New Jersey, agents seized a storage unit filled with unused federal uniforms, Pentagon-grade ID cards, and pre-printed seals meant to pass as authentic. In Phoenix, investigators uncovered a rogue data router quietly forwarding Defense Department shipment logs to servers in northern Mexico. In Seattle, a seemingly harmless rental home, leased under the identity of a veteran who had died 15 years earlier, revealed laptops wired directly into procurement databases and heat maps matching Kelton's phantom route matrix. Each discovery pointed to the same chilling truth. This infiltration was not improvised. It was engineered. Back in Washington, analysts layered every new finding onto a consolidated national map. When the final markers illuminated, a hush fell over the room. The network stretched through dozens of state offices, 9 federal agencies, and hundreds of private sector partners, unknowingly linked through forged contracts, mirrored shipments, and corrupted logistics corridors. It was a web, and America had been walking across it for years without realizing it was there. For the first time, federal leadership understood the full weight of what they were facing. The cartel had not tried to overpower the United States from the outside. They had grown quietly beneath the institutions meant to defend it, using stolen authority and stolen trust as their most effective weapons. And as investigators stared at the glowing threat map, one still dotted with empty spaces waiting to be filled, a single question rose through the room. If this is only one network, how many more are already woven into the nation's backbone, waiting for the moment to surface? If you believe these investigations matter, if you believe Americans deserve to know what is happening behind the walls of power, then like, comment, and subscribe so this story reaches more people. Your voice keeps the spotlight alive. Your engagement ensures these warnings cannot be ignored. Because this battle is far from over, and the next layer of truth may already be waiting to be uncovered.